welcome to this week's video. Now, coming up on this week's video, now, the elephant in the room, were they miming? Now, I've just got back from watching the Eagles at Coop Live in Manchester. Now, if you haven't seen it, I brought a video out a few weeks ago, which I'll link to here, entitled, I've paid £300 for a ticket to see the Eagles and the internet says they may be miming. Now that is my most popular video by absolutely miles. I was very surprised by how popular it was, and I'd basically seen Phil from Wings of Pegasus. He brought a video out where he'd been sent two videos of Don Henley singing Desperado several months apart. He put the two videos together and discovered that the vocal matched exactly, which his conclusion is, and it's probably the only conclusion, that it was the same vocal track, which means either Don can sing exactly the same thing every night, which is almost certainly unlikely, or he was miming. Now, I had loads of comments on my video, over 1,000, most of them quite nice, I suppose, but quite a lot of them asking me if I could review the gig after I'd been, so here goes. Now, when I first booked the tickets, I was completely unaware that they were building this new venue in Manchester, and it wasn't until there was all these news items about how it wasn't able to open on time, they were behind schedule, that I looked at the parking space that I'd booked and I went, oh, I've booked a parking space 5 minutes walk from the other Manchester arena, which turns out is absolutely nowhere near it. So I had to go back onto this parking space website where I'd booked the first one, unbooked the first one, which cost me about £4. I should have known it wasn't right, shouldn't I? Because it's never going to cost me £4. And I rebooked nearer the proper venue and it cost me about £24. But by chance, it was actually a brilliant parking space that was only about 10 minutes from the venue, which I don't know, that might have even been closer than the official parking. So here's some little videos of me approaching the venue, and as you can see, it's a very cool looking building, and these brilliant sort of screens built into the side of it where they project various adverts and sort of notices of what's going on, as well as the name of the venue. And I actually arrived before the doors opened. I think they might have opened a few minutes late, but I booked the parking so I could get there in time, and I thought, I've spent £300, I'm going to spend as much time in this building as possible. So I queued up to get in. It was a bit of a sort of one of those snaking round in this queuing system, but it didn't ever feel like there was loads of people there. And it was a brilliant system. I had the ticket on my phone, you just pressed it against the barrier, which opened automatically, and I went in and I saw these amazing blue escalators in front of me, and immediately I was drawn to them and travelled up the escalator, only to find that that was the top floor and I was meant to be on the ground floor, so I went straight back down them again. So I took my seat in the venue after being relieved of about £12 for a hot dog and a can of Coke, which is rather expensive, but I guess you kind of expect these things at these venues. So filmed the venue as it was filling up. 23,500 capacity, I think. I'm not sure how that compares to the O2 in London. It's designed to sound great acoustically, and it's interesting, you know, even as it filled up with that many people in there, at no point did it seem noisy with the ambient noise of people speaking. I don't know if that's the sheer size of it or just because it's such a good acoustic space. So first up, the Doobie Brothers. I'm going to review them first because they were on and they're a major band, and I was very pleased to see them. I mean, it was originally Steely Dan when I booked the ticket, who I really wanted to see because they're one of my other favourite bands, but I do like the Doobie Brothers, and in particular when I found out they were with Michael McDonald, who's one of my all-time favourite singers, I was extremely pleased. Now, the four full members, not the touring members, are Tom Johnstone and Patrick Simmons, who were in the original lineup. And then also there's John McFee, who's been in the band since the 70s, and then of course who joined later on and sort of changed the sound, Michael McDonald. Now, the sound for the Doobie Brothers, I have to say, it wasn't great. I was a bit perturbed when they started. For me, the vocals weren't quite clear enough over the music, and the bass was really indistinct, which I find is common to all big arenas. I've always found that at the O2. It's very difficult to hear what's going on with the bass, and I've got these musicians' earplugs. They're proper moulded ones, you know, 200 quid's worth of earplugs that they're attenuating, so they're meant to bring all the frequencies down evenly by minus 17 dB. And I put them in, even though it wasn't too loud. Some gigs I put them in because it's just too loud, but it wasn't too loud. It was just, it can sometimes clear up the harshness and make it clearer. And I tried it with and without, and I still found it quite difficult to hear the bass. On the songs I knew, it was absolutely fine because you kind of imagine what the bass note's doing, but there were a few that I wasn't overly familiar with, and I struggled really to hear what was going on. But Tom Johnson's got a fantastic voice, and then Patrick Simmons, he sung a song too, but then of course it came to Michael McDonald, who, oh, it was just amazing. I guess it was kind of what I was expecting. He just sounded fantastic, just pitch perfect, one of the greatest voices ever in my opinion. His kind of Rhodes playing, absolutely fantastic. I just love his voice, and I'm always for my own amusement trying to impersonate him. In fact, I've got a good story here. This links quite well to the Eagles, because Trevor, who's the bass player in the Illegal Eagles, who are one of the biggest Eagles tribute bands in the UK, I used to play in a function band with him, and we both used to do backing vocals behind the female lead singer in Michael McDonald voices, and sometimes we laughed so much doing it we couldn't finish the song. And it's interesting with the Doobie Brothers because it's like they're a band of two halves. You've got the stuff like Long Train Running, Listen to the Music, all those kind of tunes, and then you've got the Michael McDonald ones. They sound very different. They're kind of keyboard driven, the Michael McDonald ones, but it was all great. It was fantastic. They played loads of their songs that I do recognise, you know, as well. China Grove, Taking It to the Streets, Listen to the Music, Long Train Running, all of those. It was brilliant. It was a really good set. Although, as I say, the sound wasn't fantastic. It was still good. It was probably better than most sounds you get in arenas, but not as good as I was hoping. So then on to the main act. Now, as the Doobies finished, I went out to get another drink, and when I came back in, the stage was swarming with roadies. I mean, this was a pretty major turnaround, because I think there's 8 or 9 in each band, and they had all completely different gear, so they sort of had to swap everything over, so it was a pretty major turnaround. And then all the lights dimmed, everyone cheers, and they showed this brilliant montage up on the big screens of the Eagles. It was a kind of minute or two of a sort of potted history. It showed them back in the 70s singing the same song, and then a bit more modern clip for all the different members and stuff. And it kind of distracted you because you didn't notice that in the dark they'd all moved onto the front of the stage. They were all in a big line, and then all the lights came on and they sung Seven Bridges Road, which was absolutely perfect. Then they went into Take It Easy, sung by Deacon Frey, who's Glenn Frey's son. So I have to say at this point that the sound really improved when the Eagles came on. It was so clear, you could hear absolutely everything. The bass was really distinct. It's the best sound I've ever heard in a big arena like that. Then they went into One of These Nights, sung by Don Henley, and then the third song was Lying Eyes, sung by Vince Gill. Now, I have to say I was spoilt on this night. It's 3 of my favourite all-time singers, Don Henley, Michael McDonald, and then Vince Gill. But I have to say Vince Gill was my absolute favourite. I mean, the tone of his voice, his phrasing, his intonation, and the emotion in his voice is just absolutely fantastic. I think it's some of my favourite singing I've ever heard live. Now, there wasn't a lot of sort of speaking in between songs, but after a few songs, in between every song, it would kind of go dark, and they'd all swap. They all seemed to play a different instrument on every song, or they'd move on to a different instrument, different guitars. But Don came out the front with a guitar, acoustic guitar, which he was fiddling with while he was talking, and he was very funny. He did this sort of bit of patter, probably quite well rehearsed. I don't know if he does the same every night, but it was very funny. Now, it took a while before Joe Walsh took the lead vocal, and when he came out, he spoke a bit, and he's really funny. I mean, he's a great character, and then he sung, I can't remember what the first song he sung was, but it was great, great guitar playing. And one thing I've never noticed about him as well is he's got massive hands. When he was doing the bit in the Hotel California solo, you know, the diddle-doo-diddle-diddle, when he's harmonising with the other guitarists, he seemed to be stretching about 7 frets. It was unbelievable. Which brings me on to the other guitarist, who was absolutely fantastic. He plays all the lines off the record. He doesn't just do them sort of parrot fashion, you know, exactly as the record. He kind of makes them his own with a fantastic tone and feel. I looked him up when I got home. He's been a touring member of the band since about 2001. Stuart Schmit, his name is. And one thing I particularly like that he did, there's a bit on one of the Eagles records which I don't like, which is at the end of the Peaceful Easy Feeling solo. It's in E major, I think, and it's all this nice sort of E majory thing on the solo. And the very last lick, he plays an E minor pentatonic lick, which I remember Tom Bukovac mentions it on one of his videos as well. It's always really graced on me, but he didn't do that. He turned it into a nice major thing, which I thought was pretty cool.
I remember the solo on Peaceful Easy Feeling by the Eagles has a little bit of that. Those are similar chords, and it has a little bit of that pretty hard pentatonic minor rub at the end of it. And it kind of it bothers me a little bit, but it was still a hit song, and I've never written a song that good, so I'm not complaining. So anyway,
now the elephant in the room. Were they miming? There were 2 announcements. Firstly, before the Doobie Brothers came on, and then before the Eagles came on. They were the same announcement, pre-recorded, and they were both from the Eagles. One wasn't from the Doobie Brothers, one from the Eagles. They were both from the Eagles, identical announcements saying, please keep photography to a minimum and no flash photography, and do not film using your smartphones. Do not film or record using your smartphones. Now, this is weird because I haven't heard that for a long time at a music gig. You know, it's pretty much expected now, isn't it, that you're going to be filming at a music gig. I've heard that announcement at, say, theatre shows or comedy or magic or something like that, because that spoils it. But it's different for music. It's kind of expected. So I thought that was a bit weird. So we have to start with the Doobie Brothers. They were the first act on. Now, were they miming? No, I don't think they were at all. They've got great voices, all of them that sung lead, but of course Michael McDonald, one of my favourites, I mean, he absolutely wasn't miming. He's kind of playing around with the melodies on everything, but he's still pitch perfect, but it's live, there's no way it's not. And also when he's playing his keyboard, he's kind of fiddling with all the patches and stuff, which if he was miming, he wouldn't need to. He could just sit there and do this, couldn't he? But he wasn't miming. They did use a click track on one of the songs at least, which suggests they might have been using it on other songs for maybe some production bits or something, but that's, you know, maybe they were. And the only reason I know they're using a click track because they did this brilliant thing where they had projected up on the big screen footage of them in the probably 70s, maybe early 80s, singing one of the songs while they were actually singing it and playing it live. Just the visual from the old concert was up on the top, so it was brilliant seeing the same people now and then doing the same song, and the only way they could sync that up is by doing it with a click track. So on to the Eagles. I mean, this is really the main bit, isn't it? Deacon Frey, I don't know how you say it, sung the first song. He's not miming. They're showing, when he's singing, there's a close-up camera on him the whole time. Vince Gill, when he sung, close-up camera on him the whole time. There's no way he's miming. You can just tell he's not miming. I would put any money on it that neither of those two were miming anything. But Deacon Frey's got a really nice voice. I'll be honest, I'd rather have heard Vince Gill sing all of Glenn Frey's old songs, but I can see why they've got Deacon there. And before I go any further, I would like to say that if I hadn't seen the Wings of Pegasus video, it wouldn't have even crossed my mind at any point that there was any miming going on. And there's a logical fallacy called the toupee fallacy, which is kind of the idea that you sort of say to yourself, all wigs are terrible. Well, all wigs are terrible because the only ones that you can see are bad wigs. If a wig's good, you can't see it. And it's the same with miming. If somebody's miming well, you can't tell. So, you know, Joe Walsh's guitar playing, he was definitely playing live. He wasn't miming any of the guitar parts. And what was strange with him, he went from certain bits, like early on in the set, he was playing, and it was a bit, it wasn't great, it wasn't quite together, and like the Life in the Fast Lane intro, when the way he played was a bit sort of ham-fisted, a bit percussive. It wasn't like the record at all. But then he did Funk 49, and it was some of the best guitar playing I've ever heard live. It was very weird how he could go from not great to absolutely out of this world. If you go back to my original video, I posted a bit about Joe Walsh singing, I think the song's called In the City, where he's obviously singing the first 3 lines of the verse, and then the last line of the verse has got a really high note in, and you can hear, particularly if you listen to it on the speaker on your phone, you can hear that it's a very different timbre, and he sort of pulls away from the mic, but it sounds like it's a pre-recorded line, as if, you know, he's singing most of it, because the rest of it's a little bit pitchy and a bit weird, but this one line is perfect. He's got this really high note in. And interestingly, most of the time when Joe was singing, he had a close-up camera on him. For that one line in each verse, the camera suddenly backed right off and you couldn't see it, which I'd never noticed that if I hadn't seen it on this video before. But he did sing, you know, like Life's Been Good. I mean, that's really high. He did seem to sing that crystal clear. I don't know if he's using the same trick as on the other song, if that is indeed something he did, but there were definitely bits that he was kind of throwing things in and improvising, which no way could have been on a track. But the one thing that did happen, which made me a little bit suspicious, he went to the mic and he sung something. Obviously it was a bit, he went off-piste and sung something before the main line of the song, and his microphone was turned off. I didn't film it, but I've watched it and went, and again, I wouldn't have thought anything of it if I hadn't seen these videos. Why would they turn his mic off? Now, the big one, Don Henley. Now, his vocals were brilliant. I mean, he's got the most tremendous voice, and they didn't sound totally perfect. They were, you know, these slight pitch imperfections like they were live. I have to say, after the second song he sung one of these nights, after Deacon Frey had sung the first song, it was kind of, it did sound a bit more produced, but it sounded live. You know, he's playing the drums as well. But with Don Henley, whenever he was singing lead vocals, there was no close-up on him singing, whether he was behind the kit or out the front. If I show you these, this is Hotel California, and there was absolutely no close-up of him singing here. And when he did Desperado, there was absolutely no footage of anybody singing during that song. So I left the concert thinking to myself, I don't think they were miming. People have put comments on my video saying, he got caught, he's not miming anymore. And that was the kind of feeling I had. So that was kind of my conclusion. But it's not. Because I wish I hadn't done this, but I couldn't resist it. I really wish I hadn't done this. I recorded only a couple of little bits. I just wanted to watch the concert. I didn't want to film it. The bloke next to me was filming the whole thing. It was so annoying. All I could see with his phone in front of me for half the gig. I filmed a tiny bit of Hotel California because I wanted to see what key they were doing it in, and a bit of Desperado for the same reason. Now, Hotel California, they do a semitone down from the record, which makes me think that probably he is singing it live. I mean, why would you change the key if you're going to mime it? You do it in the record key. And the guitars, because they were showing close-ups of the guitars were obviously tuned down a semitone because they were playing in B minor on the guitars. I know they've been doing it in B flat minor for years, so maybe he is singing that live and dropping the key as semitone, because it's really hard to sing that song in B minor. I know I do it in A minor, and even that's quite high. But this is the bit that I wished I hadn't done, because I was going to sign off and say I don't think they were miming. I recorded a little bit of Desperado, and I checked, and it was the same bit. That this is by coincidence. I wasn't even going to do it. I just thought, oh, actually I want to check what key they're doing it in, because I'd found on my previous video that he dropped it to F about 15 years ago when he was on the Howard Stern show. So I thought to myself, maybe he's dropped the key. It sounded the original key, but I haven't got perfect pitch, so I wanted to check later. And it just so happened, and this was completely by chance, I filmed the same bit that Phil on the Wings of Pegasus video analysed. And I wasn't going to do it. I was trying to stop myself, but I recorded both bits into my sequencer on my computer, the bit that Phil analysed and the bit that I recorded on my phone, and I lined them up. Now, I'm not going to put these on here because I don't want to get a copyright strike. I'm not going to put any of the audio from the gig on here. I'll put some photos on, as we've seen. But to my dismay, I panned one to the left, one to the right. Phil's is an isolated vocal because he's isolated just that so he can analyse it. I just put the whole track on the other side of the stereo image, played the two together, thinking, I don't think it's the same vocal. The vocal exactly matches up. And it's the funny thing is, on my recording, the vocal sounds a little bit pitchy, like it would live. Not pitchy, but it's not, doesn't sound auto-tuned, which you can't tell on Phil's video because he's removed the vocal. But when I put the two together, it's like, you know, they disappear because it sounds like one vocal. It's absolutely identical. And I wish I hadn't done it, because I was convinced to the conclusion of this video, right up to the point when I filmed it, I thought I'm just going to check the key on that, was that I don't think they're miming. But this vocal on Desperado, I don't know about the rest of the songs, I've got no evidence either way, but on Desperado, that vocal that he sung on the night that I saw is exactly the same as the vocal on Phil's video. And he's either done that by being able to sing exactly the same every night over the past 6 months, which you decide, is that possible, or it's exactly the same vocal track. So there we are, that's my conclusion. I wish I hadn't checked, to be quite honest, because I had a brilliant night. It actually hasn't marred my enjoyment of it. I mean, my favourite bits actually were probably Michael McDonald and Vince Gill singing anyway. And I love Don Henley's voice, but it does sound like the record, whether he was singing live or not. I mean, there were bits I'm pretty certain he was singing live, but I might be wrong. I wouldn't put money on it. There were definitely bits Joe Walsh was singing live. As I say, all the other singers on stage, I think they were all playing live. Not sure about the backing vocals. The backing vocals are absolutely perfect all the way through, which, you know, who's to say they aren't? I mean, they're a brilliant band, they're all brilliant singers, so it could be. But that one thing, that Desperado, I wish I hadn't found out, or think I found out. Still don't know. I don't know conclusively. Make your own mind up. I'm not going to put it on here because I don't want to. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed the video. I bring out new videos at 7 PM UK time every Friday, and I'm going to leave you once again with my song with all the titles of the Eagles tracks in. I got a copyright strike for putting Eagles material on one of my videos before, so I wrote this song which got all the names of the Eagles songs in, because you can't copyright a name. So I'm going to leave you with this, and I hope to see you next week.
Take me down. I won't sing the new kid in town. I wanna stick around for Ah, take it easy.